What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 409. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the, as is custom, hotel bed next to me is Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, welcome to Boston.
Hi.
So you came in early this morning, and you and I are here to cover the World Championship for Magic, which is, well, it's going to be your last stretch in the booth here before you re-enter the fray, at least at this level, right?
It is. I'm going to be showing up at Pro Tour Sundays is what I've been told, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, but this is a big one. You're really kind of going out with a bang here. $100,000 prize for first. That's the first time that's happened. So we're kind of on the eve of one of the more important Magic tournaments ever, but of course we got limited on our mind.
Yeah, and we're going to record this show, then see tomorrow how people draft.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, we get to check our work. So before we get into all that, of course, I want to mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com. That is the place to go on the internet for anything you need Magic related. That's right. Anything at all. I noticed one thing because, of course, there's a whole bunch of free content up on the site and it goes up there all the time, videos and articles and that kind of thing. But I noticed that there was an article by Frank Karsten, who writes for CFB, and it says a pick order list for Ixalan. Now, this is kind of interesting because you and I aren't that big on pick order lists. We don't do them for the show because they kind of go out the door once you're a few picks into a draft. And while you can derive some useful information from them, we'd rather kind of teach you to fish type thing.
Yeah, I mean, you give a man fire, and then he'll fire it for the rest of the day. You light him in on fire, he'll fire for the rest of his life. That's kind of the LR philosophy.
That is not it. We're not going to burn our listeners with. But at the same time, there's some interesting stuff to be gained from it. And Frank actually did it sort of a different way. I'll put a link in the show notes, but he took information from multiple sources.
He didn't actually put in his own judgment at all. He just aggregated actually our ratings, my ratings for my written set review, and then the Draftaholics anonymous ratings, which I actually don't even know what that is, but sounded like a user-generated website.
No. And you're slightly wrong. So yes, Draftaholics, which by the way, that's the website where it shows two cards and you pick the one that you would pick.
Sure. And
it just does it over and over. I'll put a link for that too. It's actually a really fun little, like at the beginning of format, just bang it out, and then it'll rank them. And it did your limited ratings from the site, from CFB. But it did the LR community ratings.
Oh, the community ratings.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So the ones that you, dear listeners, have put together and kind of came up with this aggregate list. So I don't know. I mean, I took a quick look at it. I haven't had a chance to really, scope it out, but I'll put a link to it in the show notes so that you can do so. And that's just, one example of free content. We're also going to talk about a pick discussion article that, or was it a video that Ben did?
Ben Stark had posted a pick one, pack one.
A pick one, pack one on the website as well that was controversial to say the least. But of course, while you're there, you can pick up anything you need for standard. You can pick up Ixalan now and, get a box, get your friends together, draft it. You can find all of those things at channelfireball.com. Also, the show is brought to you directly by you via the Patreon. I was talking to one of our listeners at the GP last weekend, and he said, yeah, it made sense because he heard me say something like, look, do you think you've gotten better enough at this game to earn a booster pack, once a month or something along those lines? And he said, yeah, that kind of resonated with me because he said, I think I have. And so I thought, well, that'd be cool. I'll just give back. And again, I always say it on the show. The show's free, right? Like we are going to keep doing the show thanks to the people that make the Patreon possible. But, if you want to give back and make it keep it going and growing and viable and all that stuff, we have a good way to do that via Patreon. There's a link in every episode of the show for anybody who wants to check out the details on that. A couple of other quick things that I wanted to mention that I had kind of come by as part of the Magic community and reached out to one and had one reach out to me, that kind of thing, were a couple of actually charitable things that I think are cool and worth looking at. One of them is called Extra Life. It's when I did some hosting for it, Wizards of the Coast, last year. And this is one that Mike Turian is big on. And I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes as well. But they're going to be doing a 24-hour stream on October 13th. A lot of cool people are going to be there for commentary, and it's going to go to Seattle Children's Hospital, which needs no explanation there. It's a hospital for sick kids, and who wouldn't want to help that out. So I'll put that in there if you want to join along on the stream as well. They usually do cool giveaways, and it tends to be just like a kind of a fun atmosphere. And of course, you feel good because you're helping out with Seattle Children's Hospital. Also, Play for Faye. This is one that Cedric Phillips has set up that is going to breast cancer research, as far as I know, and that is a Facebook page that I can send you as well. That is Saturday, October 7th. So this show is going to be going up on the 5th, and that's going to be happening there. You can also, there's a link so that you can donate to it or support it, even if you can't actually make it out to the event, which will be held in the Seattle area. That time, all the details are going to be in the link, but that's the kind of thing that affects a lot of people, and I like it when I see good people get behind good causes, and I figured sometimes we should use our platform to help out with that kind of stuff. So I'll keep it short, though. For now, we've got a couple of crack-a-packs to do, and then we're going to get into first impressions of Ixalan, because Luis and I have had a decent amount of time now to draft. Normally, we would be sitting here on the eve of a pro tour, but instead, I've already got a GP under my belt, and or would we be? Yeah, that'd actually be next show, right? Yeah, we're actually a week ahead of schedule, aren't we?
Yes, normally there's an extra week in there.
Yeah.
And this would be the GP week, and next week would be the Pro Tour.
Yeah, and so I feel it, man. Like I'm going to sit down for the draft tomorrow morning at the World Championship, and I'm just like still figuring out the last on the card names and stuff. And but anyway, I have had my hands on this format, talked to a lot of pros, and drafted actually quite a bit. I don't know, I'm probably 12 or 13 drafts in, maybe even 15. Like I've done a lot now. You've done a bunch yourself, right?
Yeah, about 15.
Okay, so we're a similar split, and that of course means that we have a place to start. So this one comes from Pete and John, who I met at the GP. Thank you, Pete and John. Appreciate it. And let's get into this first crack-a-pack of the format. So first card is Shining Aerosaur. That's the 4 and a white 3/4 flying. Card's been solid for me.
It has been fun.
If replaceable, but I like it. I actually think it's a good Magic card. What about this next guy, Deadeye Tormentor, the 2 and a black 2/2 human pirate, and it's got Raid. Your opponent discards a card.
I think this card's playable in an aggressive pirates deck.
Yeah, I found
it to be fine.
Yeah, the interesting thing, I remember a chat that you were having earlier today that made me really realize that this was kind of the poster child for it, which is like the raid trigger happens when you cast it and you get a big benefit, but then you kind of have to stare down at this card for the rest of the game, and it's a 2/2 for 3.
Get into that a little later, but there's a lot of vanilla creatures once they hit the board here.
That's
all
right.
All the pirates that make treasure, for example.
Next is One with the Wind, and this is one that you and I recognize right off the bat as very powerful, a potent package. It's 1 in a blue for an aura that gives a creature +2/+2 in flying.
Yeah, I actually think the card I would take of these 3 cards right now. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be happy taking One with the Wind first, but this is a way to really just put your opponent into you have to have it or you're dead spot. If you put this on a 2/2 or a 3/3, they're just dead if they don't have an answer. And if you put it on a Jade Guardian, they're actually just dead. There's no answers.
There's just no answers for it realistically in the format. So you got to respect it, right? It is high risk, high reward. If your creature dies, you stand a good chance to lose the game. But if it doesn't, you can win. So, finding that right moment to play it can be good, but very high power level. Crash the Ramparts is next. This is the 2 and a green instant. Creature gets +3/+3 and trample.
Not very high on this one.
This has been outclassed by the cheaper ones, has it not?
Yeah. The 1 mana tricks have been great. The 3 mana tricks, not so good.
All right. Well, here's the first test for One with the Wind. Fire Cannon Blast. 1 red sorcery does 3 to a creature. With Raid, it does 6.
Yeah, it's certainly taking Fire Cannon Blast over One with the Wind.
Same. Yep. All right. So we'll put that in the first spot. Here's a card that I find to be like filler-ish, and there's a lot of them like that. It's called Direfleet Interloper. It's a 3 and a black pirate with menace. It's a 2/2 and it has explore. It explores when it enters the battlefield.
Yeah, this card is
a fine card, right?
A fine playable, but like you said, filler.
Yep. This one's not. This one's actually worse. It's Encampment Keeper. Bad dog. It's white for a 1/1 first strike, and this is the you can pay 8 mana, sack it, and you can do a pretty good effect. All your creatures get +2/+2 until end turn, but 8 mana on board.
Not a very big fan of this one.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. Run Aground. Here's a decent card. 3 and a blue instant. Put target artifact or creature on top of its owner's library.
I think this is worse than Fire Cannon Blast, and I think it's worse than One with the Wind. I'm not sure.
That's interesting.
Part of the problem I have with Run Aground is this is a fast format. We'll be talking about the speed of the format, and if you're casting this on a 2 or 3 drop, you're not really getting much value out of it.
No. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that in comparison. I like Fire Cannon Blast better. Unknown Shores. Pretty out of place here. That's the one that taps for color. It's a land that taps for colorless, or you can pay 1 mana, tap it to add a mana of any color.
Yeah.
I found it really unimpressive. Next, okay, so and this sort of it continues or puts us a little further into a discussion we'll have later. It's swashbuckling, which is the 1 in a red enchantment. Aura, chance a creature. The creature gets +2/+2 in haste.
I don't think this is competitive with the other cards we've laid out.
I don't either.
So I think the card is actually playable.
I've seen it in play and been like, that's not embarrassing. I played it last night, but I was mono red, so I was trying to stretch. I don't know. Next one, I have not been impressed by these, even though this card seems totally fine. Sleek Schooner, 3 mana, 4/3 vehicle with crew 1.
It's no Renegade Freighter, let's put it that way.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just holding it to that standard, and I should. I mean, is this a bad card? Like, why do I not like this?
Card.
Yeah.
It's a 3 mana 4/3, which is certainly a good deal. You're saving a mana, right? A 4 mana 4/3 is not a whole lot that's exciting. Mm-hmm. But having to tap a creature every turn in order to have it do anything just makes it, I think, not a very good deal.
Yeah. And of course, these don't have much synergy with any of the tribes. Next one is a card we'll talk about in a little bit. It's called Lurking Chupacabra, but I like the way you say it better. 3 and a black for a 2/3 beast horror. And whenever a creature you control explores, you can give a creature -2/2.
The Chupacabra?
Yeah, let's see like that. But just until end of turn.
The Explore deck, I think, will come together every now and then, but it's not something I'm really looking to get into initially.
Green-black is where we want to be.
That has the highest concentration of Explore at common and uncommon.
And you get the Wildwood Walker.
Yeah.
Right. But overall, I have been unimpressed by the Lurking Chupacabra because, again, I had somebody play it against me, activate it twice, and my creatures lived.
It's not permanent.
Right.
It's not counters.
I'm like, I almost think it would be better if it was just like a -1/-1 counter. Now, if I happen to have the Vampires deck against that opponent, well, I would have been singing a different tune for sure because that would have wiped out 2 of my creatures. Next card I like quite a bit is called Deadeye Quartermaster. That's the 3 and a blue 2/2 pirate. And when she enters the battlefield, you can search your library for an equipment or vehicle card, reveal it, and put it in your hand. And what I actually like about it is not Sleek Schooner as much as Pirate's Cutlass, which is a card that is pretty hot right now. That's a card that I think a lot of people like. I know I do. And being able to search it up with the Deadeye Quartermaster is like powerful stuff. I mean, that's a good, little 1-2 punch, even if this isn't really up to par as far as.
Yeah, I'm not taking Deadeye Quartermaster first.
No, I mean, I'm not either. I'm still on Fire Cannon Blast, but I like the card. I mean,
it's okay.
This is our initial impression show.
Yeah.
Cancel that order. We've got a nice rare.
Fathom Fleet Captain?
Yeah, good eye. You're ready to be in the booth tomorrow, I can tell.
Yeah, this is a 1 and a black for a 2/1 Menace, and when it attacks, if you control another non-token pirate, you can pay 2 colors to make a 2/2 pirate with Menace. Yeah, this card's great. 2 mana 2/1 Menace is highly playable, and if you start triggering this, you're just going to win the game.
Yeah.
Like your opponent's dead.
Yeah, and it has all these little synergies too. Evasive 2-drop means that raid is more likely to get triggered, and it's also a pirate for things like the card we just mentioned, the Cutlass. That is a trivially easy pick in my mind. Fathom Fleet Captain. We gave it an A- in the review, and it is held up. I think it's just great. Like
It might even be one of the interesting things because this format is a little light on good cards. Like it is like got a low density of really good cards. There's a lot of filler. Mm-hmm. It means that having the cards that we have with high grades is even more important. Because the disparity is bigger.
They go up in value.
They're just relatively better in the format.
So I might have taken it too far. But I had it in a draft video for CFB and I called it Pack Rat.
It's not Pack Rat.
2 mana.
Yeah, but if you kill that, the fun stops. Like your opponent's still gonna lose if you make 2 pirates, then they kill it. But if you play this on turn 2 and you have like a 1-drop pirate or something and you attack and make a pirate on turn 3, and then they kill it, the game isn't just over.
All right.
Pretty close.
You might have talked me up. All right, this next one, Ed and Basil. Thank you, Ed and Basil, for the pack. I met you at GP Providence. And let's see what we got here. Hopefully something sweet. First card up, Slash of Talons.
White to deal 2 damage target attacking or blocking creature at instant speed.
Yeah, we've been talking just briefly here about how we've both thought the format played a little quicker than we thought.
This card's been good.
It's the kind of card you want.
The only thing I haven't liked about it is like the red-white dinosaur aggro deck doesn't have a ton of room for cards like this that aren't aggressive, but this card has still been good. Like, I find that either I'll main deck it or I'll have it on my sideboard and bring it in more than half the time.
Yeah. One of the things that's really nice for is actually foiling the the combat tricks, because people are they're just jamming on
it's
you.
great against Merfolk too,
Right.
because they have these like 2-1 flyer, Shaper Apprentices, or unblockable river sneaks, and you just need something that'll interact.
Yeah. Next is Mark of the Vampire, card we mentioned a minute ago. 3 and a black, aura, the creature gets a chance of creature gets +2/+2, and lifelink. It's a big swing the turn it hits.
Yeah, my least favorite part about this card is it doesn't make the creature into a vampire, and putting this on a vampire is also kind of like a flavor fail, so that kind of disturbs me. The card is good though. Basically, there's not tons of great removal, and if you land this on an evasive creature or just a decently sized creature and get a solid hit in, you can't feel too bad about it.
You know, I'm reading this, and I think what's actually happening is the vampire's like, I'm going to get you.
Yeah, but then why does that have +2/+2 in lifelink?
God, that's a good point, Luis. That's why you're the flavor police, my friend. New Horizons, 2 and a green, aura and chance to land. You get a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures, which seemed kind of weird when we read it, but it's actually played out okay, and then the land can tap for any 2 color of mana.
Yeah, this card's playable, but I have not liked the ramp decks or the 3-color decks all that much.
Yeah, that's the big question is if you're trying to go big, dinosaurs are the thing that comes to mind first, maybe even some type of going deep deck with 4 colors or whatever. But this New Horizons card kind of tries to play both. It's like, well, now you can attack and you also have a bunch of mana. It feels a little strange.
Yeah, I have not I'm not happy first picking any of these cards so far.
There's another One with the Wind.
I guess that's the front runner.
There's another Swashbuckling.
Okay, that's not.
So
this is the all pants pack.
We got the pants pack here. Headwater Sentries. That's the 3 and a blue 2/5. It's a Merfolk. Yeah. All right, here we go. Vanquish the Weak. This card's been solid. 2 and a black for an instant destroy target creature with power 3 or less.
This card's good.
Yeah.
Certainly it would be the card I would take out of this pack.
Ooh.
Pirate's Cutlass is next. It's a 3-colorless equipment, and when it enters the battlefield, you can attach a target pirate you control. You can also pay 2 to equip it, and it gives +2/+1. I would take that over Vanquish the Weak, pick 1, pack 1.
Would you? Stay open? You're on that Ben Stark plan?
Yeah, it's not. It's funny because Pirate's Cutlass is a tribal card. It's definitely better in Pirates. Like that part is true. But I've actually played this card like in Vampires and I'm very happy with it. Me too. You put this on like a Skyblade of the Legion or a 1/1 lifelink token and you're like, yeah, this is a good deal.
Agreed. Yeah. I like this card a lot.
Yeah.
I probably would lean towards it actually over, especially that it's colorless. Also, by the way, you must equip.
Yes.
Don't forget. Ooh, another card that you and I both like, Anointed Deacon, 4 and a black 3/3 vampire. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can have target vampire you control get +2/+0.
Really like Anointed Deacon. This is the 5-drop you want in the vampire deck.
Agreed.
It just pushes through all your like Skymarch Bloodletters and your 1/1 tokens, and so far the card's been very good. I still take Pirate's Cutlass over it.
Yeah, I'm not taking Anointed Deacon first.
I wouldn't take Anointed Deacon over Vanquish the Weak either. Like, I would still take Vanquish over that. But I do like Anointed Deacon a lot.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is also, like, just keeping in mind that if you take Vanquish the Weak, you could very, very well end up in, like, a blue-black Pirates deck or something.
Your Pirates or Vampires, or both those avenues.
Where Deacon is, like, it only targets Vampires. It can target itself, so it's not, like, 0, but, like, you need to be in Vampires. Speaking of, this one's performed very well for me. Inspiring Cleric. This is our first uncommon. It's the 2 and a white 3/2 Vampire Cleric, and it enters the battlefield. You gain 4 life.
Yeah, in a fast format, this is the 3-drop you want.
Yeah.
Vampires is also a little heavy on 3s, I've noticed, or it can be.
Yes.
And if you have this card, then you end up not feeling too far behind, even if you missed your 2-drop.
That's right. Kitchen Finks?
Yeah, it's a Kitchen Finks.
All right.
You don't even have to wait to get the second life. You just get all 4 right away.
Yeah. So, do we like Vanquish the Weak, Pirate's Cutlass, or Inspiring Cleric out of those?
I'd still take the Cutlass, I think.
Over the Cleric? All right, well, I'm going to tempt you further. Shapers of Nature.
Well, it is a gold card. This
card,
is 1 blue-green for a 3/3 Merfolk, and you can pay 3 and a green to put a ++1 counter target creature, or 2 and a blue and remove a ++1 counter from a creature you control to draw a card. Shapers, I think, is the best card in this pack in terms of power level. Taking a gold card versus a colorless card is pretty brutal. I think you're supposed to take Cutlass here. Pick 1, pack 1.
Right, and this goes to what we talk about when we talk about the tribal nature of the set. Because what you're doing if you take Shapers here is you're planting your flag in Merfolk. And if Merfolk are open, you're thrilled.
Right, you got paid off.
And in every other scenario, you rip up Shapers of Nature and you don't get to play them. Where the Cutlass has a wider range of cards that it can go in, even if it's not as powerful.
The only deck that Colorless is, I think, actively bad in is kind of high curve dinosaur deck.
Yeah.
But even like a low curve red or white dinosaur deck, first of all, you can have some random pirates, a headstrong brute or something.
Yes.
And
totally.
then second of all, like if your curve is low, you can just put this on your 2-drops and just go to town.
It happens all the time. Tillinolly's Knight picks up a Cutlass just fine. I don't love the idea of going all in on a Shapers of Nature and just hoping that I'm in the right seat. It does bring up an interesting point, though. Let's say you were playing tomorrow, right? World Championship, 100K on the line, most prestigious tournament of the year for pros. Are you more or less likely to take a shot? Because, god dang, man, if you open up Shapers and it sticks...
It shouldn't change anything. I think that you want to take the card with the highest expected value, which I believe is Pirates Colors.
You think so?
I do.
It should change something, right?
The only way it really changes
Because, I mean, like, I'm thinking of the field you have to play against,
well, the field doesn't matter, I don't believe.
Okay.
Unless you think you're, for some reason, at a huge disadvantage, which I don't think I would be. For example, like when I played at Worlds last year, I didn't come in thinking that I was a favorite, but I also didn't think I thought like I had a good shot. I knew that.
Would you say you were about a 6th place finisher or so?
Yeah, that's where I ended up.
On average? Oh, interesting.
But Worlds actually, the funny thing about Worlds is you actually don't need a great record to make top 4.
Yeah,
so it's cutting to 4 out of 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lost on tie breaks after going 9-5. Like a 9-5 did make top 4. Mm-hmm. That even more what makes you want to take the more reliable card than the card. Like this isn't a tournament where if you 3-0 you win 100K and if you do anything else you win nothing. In those tournaments, yeah, maybe you're more likely to take a card like Shapers because like if you spike you're just going to 3-0. Or we're more likely to. But I would just take the Cutlass here.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, especially given that those records are compressed. Thundering Spineback is our next uncommon. I really like this card if you can cast it. It's the 5 green, 5/5 dinosaur that pumps all your other dinosaurs +1/+1. But you can also pay 6 mana and make a 3/3 dinosaur with trample, which ends up being a 4/4 dinosaur with trample because of the pump.
I think it's okay.
I like it.
It's expensive.
Yeah, like, look, I don't want to be playing cards like this necessarily, but one of the big knocks on the format, and we'll talk about this. In fact, let me just put it in here because I do want to mention it. Actually, we'll just use this discussion to go into it right after we're done with the pack, but mana sinks. We're kind of back in that world again where there aren't that many.
Yeah, the cycle of keepers does not count.
No.
The 8 mana activation is just pretty much out of reach. Like you'll play, for example, a Fire Shrine Keeper if you want a 1/1 menace for one, which some of the red decks do. Mm-hmm. But you're really not going to activate it all that often. Treasure makes you get there sometimes, but it's just too expensive.
It's too expensive, and so then you look to the other cards, and they don't pop up. Jungle Delver, you said it's no Delver, and, you can put some mana into it. It's not the worst case scenario, but that's not the mana sink that you're hoping for, which is, again, why cards like Shapers of Nature stand out, because that is a good place to put your mana. And cards like Thundering Spineback make me think that too, but there's so few of them. But the reason I like this is because if I am going to commit to ramping, and let's say that I take this card and I get back the New Horizons on the wheel or whatever, I'm going to have not only a good place to put my 7 mana, this is a 5/5 that pumps my team, pretty powerful effect. And on top of it, if I get to untap, even if I brick and I just draw a bunch of lands, I'm making a useful ability. So to me, this is a premium ramp target in the format. The question is, do you want to be ramping? And, do you want to be ramping more than taking a card like Pirates Cutlass?
I don't think you do. I would take the Cutlass over the Spineback.
So that's a big question that I think you're going to have to ask yourself. We got a foil. It's Crash the Ramparts. We already mentioned that. That's the pump spell. And our rare... Well, that's unplayable. It's Primal Amulet. It's 4 mana for an artifact that makes your instants and sorceries cost 1 less to cast. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you put a charge counter on it. If there are 4 or more charge counters on it, you transform it. It becomes Primal Wellspring, which is a land that adds 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery with it, you copy it.
Not playable.
Was it worth reading that whole card?
No. Did it keep the charge counters on it when you flip it?
No, you remove them.
Oh. I was just curious. All right.
Okay, so this is a big decision, though. We've got...
I actually think this is going to be a pretty common line, which is Pirates Cutlass as a colorless card over colored cards.
Uh-huh. Okay, so here... go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, I was going to say that's why the pick that Ben made was interesting. So Ben took... took Pirates Cutlass pick 1 pack 1 over the Aerosaur, the 3
Imperial Aerosaur.
3 with a white 3/3 flyer that enters the battlefield and gives one of your creatures +1/+1 and flying this turn. I would take the Aerosaur. I think Aerosaur is enough better than the Cutlass, but Ben's point is that Cutlass is a colorless card. It leaned you towards Pirates, but by no means is required to be a Pirates card. And in a format where it's really playable light and it's so much of an emphasis on finding what's open, Cutlass really helps in that regard. So I think we're going to see a lot of crack-a-packs and a lot of pick one, pack ones or pick one, pack twos that it's like, well, Pirates Cutlass, which is let's say like a 7 out of 10, versus a card that's around a 7.5. What do you do?
Yeah. And, I think that the thing that you hit on, the dynamic that you mentioned briefly there that really changes everything is the overall low level of playables, lower than what we're used to, or cards that you really want to have in your deck. Because, the format that this has reminded me the most of is original Modern Masters, which I know sounds completely absurd because that was a pretty powered up set. But that set was get in your lane. That was the name of the game.
Sure, yes.
If you were blue-white affinity, nobody else was touching your cards. There was a couple of cards that people would fight over, but think of it like you've got your blue-white affinity and somebody passes, somebody to your right is playing whatever, Thalids or something, and they see Sanctum Gargoyle, which is a really good card for the affinity deck. They have literal zero interest in it. None, right?
These are formats where it's, in a lot of ways, more important that your tribe is open rather than your colors.
Right.
Two blue drafters can correspond or, coexist next to each other if they're going after different things.
But the thing that makes it interesting for here is my approach would actually be to take cards like Shapers of Nature normally, because I would say, well, I'm just going to spike around in the first, 1 to 5 picks or whatever, just trying to figure out what's open. And I'm going to just take the highest upside cards and see if those are open. And if they're not, I can ditch them. Here, you're punished.
Right.
You're actually punished hard because you might get short on playables and play one of those one drops.
If you got an extra 5 playables per pack, or per deck rather, then you could take Shapers of Nature, and if Merfolk isn't open, you move into, dinosaurs. But because if that happens and you burn your first 2 or 3 picks, you end up really, really feeling it. Not only in terms of total playables, but also in terms of the quality of playables. Pirates Cutlass is a high quality card. If you are missing out on that card, it actually does hurt quite a bit because it's going to be so far above replacement level. It just makes it so your 2/2s trade for their 4/4s.
Yeah, and you're taking a very real risk by doing that strategy that I was saying, which is why I won't be doing that in this format.
Yeah,
and
I think in this format you want to
kind of sad.
Be a little more conservative.
Yeah, and that's not fun.
Yeah, it means that you spike less, so you have the really high upside decks less.
Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, to continue this discussion about the mana sinks, does it affect our mana bases? Are we in that 16 land territory where we don't want to be?
I think we're in 16 land territory because there's not very many good mana sinks, like you mentioned, and because you just want more 2-drops in your deck.
Yeah, so the combination of the fact that we're playing relatively low to the ground aggressive decks, and as well as no real good place to put the mana.
A lot of decks get really punished when they draw their 5th and 6th lands.
Yeah. Treasure has not affected that, right? I just don't see treasure mattering game in and game out.
Treasure makes it so Pirates can be Grixis, I think, a decent amount of the time. Just because, you'll be blue-black and you'll splash 2 red cards or something along those, or blue-red and splash a black card or 2. But the mythical, 5-color treasure deck has just not been something I've drafted. I've seen people draft it, and it is a deck. But I'm going to need to do a little more research on that one.
Yeah, it's been kind of the everybody in coverage is trying for 5-color blue.
Yeah.
Where you're drafting
Phosphorus Pirates and Sailor of Means and Depths of Desire and whatnot.
Right. So you draft those 3 commons and you end up with some number of treasure laying around. And, they do allow you to splash basically anything. You can kind of do whatever you want. Double black spells are fine. You can get away with it as long as you know that's what you're doing.
The problem is you need those powerful cards to splash.
Yes.
This is the kind of deck where if you open a Vraska or a Vona, Butcher of Magan or something, and you can end up splashing it off of treasure. But if you end up with a normal power level worth of cards, you're just trying to figure out what's open and draft that deck, because you can play a 3 or 4 color deck, but if it's all commons and uncommons, often you don't get any extra power out of it.
Right. So let's talk about some of the tribes. Let's just start with vampires. Where do you have it? Are you favoring it? Are you kind of trying to stay away from it? Do you think it's good?
I like vampires a lot. I think that the fact that it has Anointed Deacon at common as a true rewarding build around means that vampires is a very legit tribe. It's only black-white. I haven't had paired vampires with any other color.
Which is like kind of a good thing for it, right? Like it makes it like you know exactly what you're doing color-wise with it. Where with pirates, it's like I always feel like, well, am I supposed to be splashing? Am I supposed to be another color?
Pirates and dinos are a little bit more confusing. Vampires and merfolk a little bit narrower. But Anointed Deacon just combines so well with the cheap flyers. It's got multiple cheap common flyers, the Skybladed Legion and the Skymarch Bloodletter. And then also with all the 1/1 lifelink tokens, which you get a variety of ways.
You just always end up with them. Yeah, Queen's Commission, Call to the Feast.
Paladin of the Bloodstained.
Paladin of the Bloodstained, by the way, has been quite good for me.
Right. And when you make your 1/1 token into a 3/1 lifelink, first of all, they have to trade a card. They can't just get hit by it every turn. And you gain 3 life, then you do it again next turn. All of a sudden, you're winning this race. And then all the lifelinkers mean that vampires can... It's one of the decks that has the best comeback potential. Because you can miss your 2-drop. You're on the draw and you missed your 2-drop, but then you go like... Queen's Commission, and then Paladin, and then Anointed Deacon, and all of a sudden, like, you've gained a bunch of life, put a bunch of chump blockers on the board.
Yeah.
And you're doing pretty well. It's kind of like a mid-range aggressive deck. Like, yeah, you can play Vicious Conquistador, and you can try to play, 1-drops, but for the most part, it's like a deck that I think goes 2, 3, 4, 5, and kind of grinds out the opponent. It has not felt like a, balls-to-the-wall aggro deck.
No, the only time it feels like that is if you have Sanctum Seeker.
Yes, if you have the rare, this is the 3/4 that drains them for 1 when you hit them with a vampire. Yeah, that card is awesome.
It's completely dumb. Mauvrin Fane has been pretty good for me, particularly with the 2 cheap flyers that you mentioned, the Skymarch Bloodletter and the Skyblade of the Legion. Those 2 with Mauvrin Fane have been
This is a deck where I like Pirate's Cutlass quite a bit because it has the cheap flyers, it has the lifelinkers. The lifelinkers also give you time to just keep re-equipping. Which is it is a mana sink.
For sure.
So I like Cutlass in the Vampires deck a decent amount. Also, you have all like crappy like small to medium creatures, and those are the exact kind of creatures that Cutlass upgrades in a good way. So
I'm a fan of
you also get Pious Interdiction, Vanquish the Weak, and Contract Killing. So you have like 3 really good removal spells, and Vampire's Zeal is excellent.
It is. I played 4 of them in my last Vampires deck, and I was happy with that.
It just lets you win combats. The Vampires has some front-heavy creatures too, and especially when you get the Deacon going. Yeah. And then you're winning these combats, or maybe gaining life off lifelink, and it's just very mana efficient. It lets you go like 2-drop into Vampire Zeal to trade up, and then play another 2-drop, and all of a sudden you have 2 creatures in play, and they have none.
Yeah, Bishop Soldier's been really good for me too.
Yeah, the 2/2 lifelink for 2.
Yeah, because I think mainly just because so many people are trying to play pretty aggressive decks, I've just felt like this is a very good 2-drop to have.
Yeah. So I like Vampires. It's one of the more focused decks too.
Yeah. Weaknesses for Vampires?
Oh man, I've never beaten a Fiery Cannonade when I'm Vampires. This is so the Pirate class of 2 in red, instant, deal 2 to each non-pirate creature. It just wipes all the vampires. Like it just kills them all.
It's funny.
Vampires also, if you don't have Deacon or Cutlass or Vampire Zeal, like this is why we talk about these cards, you can get brickwalled by like a 3/4. They play a Prosperous Pirates and you're all of a sudden like, well, I can't attack with any of my creatures, or they play a Grazing Whiptail, the 3/4 reach, and you're just like, your board is shut down. Mm-hmm. So you need to make sure you have some of those high-end cards in order to get through. Otherwise, you will just kind of be staring at your opponent.
By the way, before we go to Pirates, Grazing Whiptail's been good for me.
Yeah, the card is good in this format.
Kind of like a fan of it.
It just lines up well with the power and toughnesses.
Pirates. So the first question to talk about for Pirates is what color Pirates are we talking about here? Have you had a chance to try out the different varieties?
I've drafted blue-black the most, though I don't necessarily think that's indicative of that's where you should be. It has seemed that blue-black is more common than either red-blue or red-black. And I think that's because there's just like a lot of good raid black pirates, and then Siren's Ruse, the 1 in a blue instant, exile a creature and then return it, and if it was a pirate, draw a card. That card is really good.
If you can go off with
it. If you can just flicker one of your pirates that have a enters the battlefield ability, you get a lot of value.
Like what? Like give me an example of one. Because like I see flickering Sailor of Means, and I'm like, whatever.
That's not that great, but like Deadeye Tormentor to make them discard another card, because remember, you can even attack with the same creature, and then it triggers its own raid. Mm-hmm. Stormfleet Aerialist, the 1/2 flying with raid, you can flicker and get a counter. It can also be decent with the 2/2 Menace for 4, like that has Explore, because retrigger
the Interloper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or Siren Lookout, the 1/2 for 3.
If you don't hit.
Especially if you don't hit, especially if it's a 1/2.
Do you ever want to spin the wheel on if you do hit?
Yeah, it's not great to do that, but Flickering any of those is good. It's also just good to like block if they use a combat trick flicker, or just chump block and then flicker to buy time. It's just pretty versatile and ends up being fairly mana efficient. So
okay, so blue-black's where you've been at. I tried out the red-black version thinking that since the format looked aggressive, I would try to go aggressive. Right. I also thought, well, that'll give me access to some really killer removal spells, right? I get the 2 black removal spells that you mentioned, but I also get, not Fiery Cannonade, whatever it's, Fire Cannon Blast.
Fire Cannon Blast.
As well as
Unfriendly Fire.
Unfriendly Fire. And one of the things that happened is that the deck didn't come together quite as nicely as I had hoped. The black commons end up falling a little bit short. Cards like Dire Fleet,
Interloper,
Fathom Fleet, the 2-1 that dies and gives you a treasure.
Oh, Dire Fleet Hoarder.
Dire Fleet Hoarder. You know, those, they disappoint a little. They leave a lot. And then one of the other things that you'll see pop up are the uncommon payoff cards for the different color pairs. And the
Dire Fleet Captain.
The captain is just whatever. It's fine.
Red black for a 2/2, and then when it attacks, gets +1 for each other attacking pirate.
Yeah, it's an okay card, but it's just very awkward to make it work. It will usually survive the big turn, but a lot of your pirates won't because they are Dire Fleet Hoarders and these kind of small blockable creatures. So, overall, I found the deck to be somewhere in the middle, but it doesn't feel, when you kind of play a deck and you're like, I'm onto something. I got this. Like the first time you play a good vampires deck, you're like, wow, like this is working, and I get this out of these. It didn't feel like that for that one. Similar for blue-red, the rare payoff is the looter, the big 4/3 looter, which I can't remember the name of either. Wow, I am so screwed tomorrow.
Well, you'll be fine. It's a marauding looter.
Marauding looter. That's a fine card. I've actually liked it. Like BDM told me he really likes that card, and his reasoning was that since we don't have mana sinks later in the format, that's his kind of late game action is to discard the extra lands that he's not going to do anything with anyway and get more action from it. And I agree. I think the card's solid, but the deck as a whole feels like it's missing something.
Yeah, my experience is that after blue-black pirates, the most common combination is actually just Grixis. Playing all 3, because you do have, like you mentioned, a bunch of the blue commons that make treasure. There's also Contract Killing and Dire Fleet Hoarder in black. And you combine all those, and you can pretty easily splash red cards in your blue-black deck. I have seen people play just straight 3-color Pirates decks. I haven't liked that as much. But I think if you have a mana base of like 8 islands, 7 swamps, 2 mountains with like 3 or 4 treasure cards, your mana base is fine, and you can afford to play like a Stormfleet Pyromancer, off the splash, or an Unfriendly Fire off the splash. I
see. But you're not trying to do the full 3-color thing.
No, the straight up full 3-color thing generally I think is not where you want to be. I'm not sure where I'm at on Pirates. I think it's okay, but it hasn't felt quite as focused. There's not that many, like Siren's Ruse is one of the biggest payoffs, but there's not that many other payoffs where like I need 9 pirates in my deck.
And you're higher on Siren's Ruse than I have been. I've seen people use it a lot and thought that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But like I want the hammer. I want the like, oh, you Siren's Rused your blankety blank. Well, the game's over, and this is much more incremental kind of.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't really end up like that.
Yeah. One other thing that we should mention about Pirates is that it does get to be the deck that takes the most advantage of Pirates Cutlass, which has really become kind of a focal point card in some ways for Pac-Man Pick One.
If you desperate Castaways into Pirates Cutlass,
that's
the 2/3 that can't attack unless you have an artifact. You end up with a 4/4 attacking them on turn 3.
Yeah, it's insane. Also, what's the uncommon Wanted Scoundrels?
Yeah, the 4/3 for 2.
That thing's a beating. I have been impressed by that, especially when you have cards like Skullduggery and that kind of thing to keep it attacking.
Oh yeah, Skullduggery is
also,
great,
by the way, Skullduggery.
Yeah, we mentioned it with the Vampire Zeal, but Skullduggery is not even like tribe specific. It's great in vampires also.
Totally.
1-mana combat tricks are just really good, and especially since everyone's playing all these like 2s, like Skullduggery is just going to find things that it can really take advantage of.
Yeah.
When you kill their 2/1 and make it so your 2/2 beats their 2/3 in combat,
it's a beating. Yeah. Also, like I was talking to Cheon earlier. We were on our way walking to get a breakfast sandwich. We missed you. You were on an airplane though, so don't get mad. We were talking about Adonto Vanguard and how impressive that card's been. That's the 1/1 for 1 and a white. When it attacks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. You can pay 4 life to give it indestructible until end of turn. card has just been such a pain. Like they played on turn 2 and you're like, oh man. And,
Yeah,
and
the
there's
card is
just
quite good.
not a lot that deals with it efficiently. And Xi'an was like, well,
You can just skullduggery it out right up.
skullduggery and get it right out of there. So that's a nice one too. Okay, let's move on to dinosaurs. Another kind of complicated one because of the 3-color nature of it. The one that you mentioned when we were doing our little pre-show thing and that I agree 100% with is red-white deck. Calling it dinosaurs isn't fully accurate.
Well, it's got Tillinolly's Knight, the 2/2
Yes.
that when it attacks, if you have a dinosaur, it gets +1/+1.
Territorial Hammer Skull's kind of the...
Territorial Hammer Skull is just a great card. That's
Yes.
the 2/3 for 3
Yes.
that taps a creature when it attacks. It's not super tribal themed.
No.
It's not going to...
Like Adonto Vanguard is...
Right. You will just
How many
take the
can
good
you get?
aggressive cards in red and white, and then you want your Tillinolly's Knights and your Thrasher Raptors. That's the 4-mana 3/3 that gets +2/+0 and trample if you have another dinosaur.
Yeah.
Like, you want those cards to be active, but again, this is light tribal. This isn't... I don't need 14 dinosaurs to make this dinosaur deck work. I need like 6.
Yeah.
So you're not essentially taking a mediocre dinosaur over a good non-dinosaur. You're going to just take the better card, but you're going to want to end up with some dinosaurs in your deck. Frenzied Raptor is a fine card in this deck.
Yeah. And I've just found that this is like right up there with the other decks if you get the power level on the aggressiveness scale. It has all the tools it needs to win, and one of the best ones is that Hammer Skull because it acts as both an attacker and a removal spell at the same time. It makes it so that in many scenarios it forces your opponent to race, and if they're forced to race and you were built to race, then it's going to give you an advantage. Also, the fact that it has 3 toughness is kind of annoying. Like it just seems to operate in a space that like makes it killable, definitely, but not easily. Like it just it takes a real spell to kill a Hammer Skull, and that really sets your opponent back too.
This deck does a way better job of staying ahead than something like the Vampires deck, but it also does a worse job of coming back when it's behind. When this deck's behind a lot of its cards, like Tillinolly's Knight and Hammer Skull are just vanilla 2/2, vanilla 2/3.
Yeah.
But when it gets out ahead, it just crushes the opponent.
Yeah.
So
And it does, and it feels that way too. You just feel like you can't lose.
Yeah, when you curve out any 2-drop into a Hammer Skull on the play, feels like your opponent can never block this game, and you're just going to win.
Yeah.
But when you're on the draw and your draw doesn't curve out quite so beautifully, you don't have those lifelinkers that Vampires has. You don't have cheap removal most of the time. So
Yeah. Another deck that I've drafted a lot more at the very early part of the format, haven't really revisited, but I assume is still fine, is red-green dinosaurs. I was really high on Otepec Huntmaster, the 1 in a red 1/2, and it makes your dinosaurs 1 cheaper, and you can tap it to give a dino haste until end of turn, for just turboing them out and just making cards like Hammer Skull look weak. Like it's just a 2/3 for 3 if you weren't going to block anyway, and if you go Huntmaster into 4-drop into 5-drop dinosaur and give them haste, like you just win that race quite easily. And you get some nice payoffs. The gold card's good. The 5/5 Trampler.
the Raging Sawtooth.
Raging Sawtooth, that thing that pings everything. That guy's good. And there's just some good beef near the top end of that deck too. The real question is this a ramp deck? Or is this a mid-range?
It's kind of more of a mid-range deck.
Mm-hmm.
The actual ramp aspect has seemed pretty bad. I don't love this deck. I think it's fine. I think if it's open, it's fine.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But the problem I have with this deck is if they kill your mana accelerants, or especially since the good mana accelerants are uncommon. That's already the danger sign number 1. Drover the Muddy and Otepec Huntmaster both.
Yeah, Kinchali's Keeper has proven mediocre at best.
Yes.
Where the Otepec Huntmaster is like, hello, friend.
And the common, like Blossom Dryad and New Horizons, these are both 3 mana. Yeah. So you just end up on the receiving end of some beatdowns if you don't have a good accelerant. And
Drover of the Mighty being premium.
Drover of the Mighty is great. Yeah. But your payoff of 5 mana 4/4, the Ceratops or Colossal Dreadmaw, these cards are good if you can play them ahead of curve, but when you don't, it feels like you're just too far behind the other aggro decks and really vulnerable to a well-timed Contract Killing or Depths of Desire, and just you end up getting kind of run over. So I think red-green is certainly a fine deck if it's open, and especially if you even have something like Fiery Cannonade, which is a nice little card for the dinosaur deck. But most of the time, I have felt that it's a little worse to try to get too fancy and just be anything but a kind of more low curve beatdown deck.
Yeah. And my feeling on it is that your average dinosaur deck of this variety is going to be how you described it, like you'd rather be doing something else. But I definitely think that there's something here if you get the pieces. If you get the right stuff at the right time, it smashes, it's bigger, it goes over the top of the other decks pretty well. But it's asking a lot. Like when you look at the...
It just needs higher rarity cards. And
yes.
That means it's going to happen less frequently.
Right. So I like it for what it's worth. What about green-white? I have played against green-white, and I've played with it one time, I believe, but I can't remember for the life of me if it was me or if I was watching somebody draft. But the deck has felt similar to other decks that I've seen in the format so far that just don't have that oomph. Like, they're good. I can't look at any of the cards and say that's a bad card. You know, you're playing Hammer Skulls, you're playing cards like Pounce and Savage Stomp, and you know, you're getting some good beef and some ramp. And it's kind of like, okay, here's a game plan. Here's a bunch of solid to good cards. But there's something missing that you get when you play a pirate deck that has a bunch of pirate stuff or a vampire deck that has, you know, anointed deacons and that kind of thing. I just don't, it feels like it's lacking it. Yeah, there's no oomph, right? It's just like a pile of pretty good cards that have a loosely related game plan. It just doesn't quite get there.
Yeah, I have not had great results with green-white.
Okay. Merfolk. That's the one we haven't talked about.
Yeah, it's the last tribe.
Where are you at on Merfolk? Because I have heard this is the one that's been the most contentious.
Oh, I think Merfolk's quite good.
You think it's good? Okay.
Yeah. I think that.
Then again, you and I, though, knew that River Herald's Boon was good.
Yes,
like
we did.
The moment we saw it.
And River Herald's Boon is very good. River Herald's Boon.
Excellent.
First of all, if you just put it on like a Jade Guardian, your opponent has a really hard time. It's got a 5/5 hexproof. Second, you can put on your evasive creatures like your Shaper Apprentice or your River Sneak. And third, sometimes your opponent just has to block your 2/2 with their 2/2 on turn 3 or 4. And if you have River Herald's Boon, you just crush them.
Yeah.
You end up with a 4/4 in play, and you know you traded 1 for 1. So that card has been really good. One with the Wind has been good here. Merfolk has a bunch of naturally evasive creatures like the ones I just mentioned, and it has a relatively low curve. It plays really well with bounce spells. So I think
Merfolk, it has access to 3 at common and uncommon.
Right. And it also has Water Trap Weaver, which is such a good card in a race. This is the Tuna Blue 2/2 that taps creature and it doesn't untap for a turn. If they leave a creature back to block and you Water Trap it, you removed it from blocking for 2 turns in a row. The turn you tap it, then the next turn it doesn't untap, you get another hit in.
Yeah, and of course it can't attack you in between either.
Right. So it makes racing really favorable, and Merfolk has the tools to not only just engage in a race with just a good curve, but also finish it with something like Water Trap Weaver, bounce spells, or evasive creatures that can get the last 6 points of damage.
Yeah, now the downside to it that I've seen, though, is that it is the most finicky of the decks. You need to curve. Like, you need to play a 2-drop and hopefully a 3-drop after that. And if you don't, your bounce spells go down in value. Sometimes your River Herald's Boons go down in value. If you're trying to like block and boon or whatever, you're so much less happy than if you're jamming, forcing them to block. You River Herald's Boon to get them. They play their stabilization creature. You bounce it. You hit them for a bunch. These are the type of games where you feel like it's firing on all cylinders and you're winning. It's the time when you get a little bit behind when you don't have hard removal in the deck. Like Pounce isn't that good in the deck. Your creatures aren't really that big.
Pounce has been pretty mediocre in the Merfolk.
Yeah, and you're going to play your Savage Stomps and it's still a really good card. But if your opponent plays a 4/4, you've got some problems, unless they're willing.
Grazing Whiptail is really annoying.
Yeah, that's a good example. So I have found this deck to be a little bit touchy, but if you do get it lined up, and I have to say, I really do think that the 2 things that come to mind for it, River Herald's Boon, that's where you're getting a big edge, and you kind of brushed over it, but I honestly think that it might be one of the things we think about when we look back at the format is Jade Guardian +1 with the Wind.
Oh, yeah.
It's so annoying to have your opponent play that because you're just like...
5/5 flying hexproof is really, really impossible to stop.
In this format, you're just not doing that. It's just, because trust me, I spent some good days of science trying out blue-white for our dear listeners, and the deck is similar to green-white, how I mentioned, where it's a pile of reasonable cards, but there's no big upside to it. And even that deck isn't putting, 5 power up that often that's going to be able to block your hexproof flyer. And, of course, then you have River Herald's Boon or whatever to finish it. But
Also worth mentioning Vine Shaper Mystic.
Yeah, that card's
the uncommon 2 and a green for a 1/3.
Very, very good.
2 plus +1 counters on your Merfolk, including itself if you want. And that card is just...
It's awesome. I have to ask you, so for our listeners that have been with us for a long time, looking all the way back to Innistrad, which is a format that's hailed as one of the best limited formats we've ever had, there's a few little callbacks from the Merfolk deck here. The River Herald's Boon reminds you a little bit of... what's it called? Travel Preps, yeah. But the one that I'm really, of course, thinking of is the...
Spectral Flight?
No, that's funny.
The one with the wind is just Spectral Flight.
It is Spectral Flight, but no, I was thinking of the Stalker.
Invisible Stalker. Jade Guardians are a new Invisible Stalker.
And the Butcher's Cleaver.
Yeah.
Is it going to feel like that? Like, is it going to be like,
quite that
this
much
is stupid, I
it doesn't
didn't
have
get to play?
lifelink. You can block it. But I think for the most part, when someone puts one with the wind on their Jade Guardian, you're going to be like, this is stupid.
This is stupid, right?
Yeah.
And it definitely feels that way. Let's talk about so one of the decks that I want to know about right now, and I already know we're going to say it's not really a thing, but this is so early still in the format. And if I look back to Hour of Devastation, we did not know where the format was going to end on week 1 or 2.
No.
Right? And it ended up being wide open. I feel safe in predicting that that's not going to be the case here. We have a lot more information, but when I do look back on it, I want to know if there is a shining light of hope, it would be this ramp treasure control deck, right? Where we can make a bunch of mana, take any bombs, and just figure, well, I'm going to be able to one-shot the bomb that's in my hand, right? Like I'm going to take all color, 5-color treasure or whatever. Could it work? Is Sailor of Means? I mean, that's a blocker that helps with the treasure. Like, is there anything there?
I'm skeptical. I would like to try it more. But part of the reason that I think this format is less open, as you said, is this is a tribal format. Hour of Devastation, there's a lot of ways to combine all the cards in that set. There's just not that many ways to combine River Herald's Boon and Anointed Deacon, with other cards. You just need to combine Deacon with Vampires and Boon with Merfolk. And that's about where it ends. Like there's not a lot of flexibility there. Like tribal does generally point you towards more linear strategies, which is what we're seeing here.
Yeah. What advice would you give at this point, given what we know? We've kind of touched on this in different points, but staying open in the draft seems to be which is what we teach anyway here on the show. I mean, this isn't new advice, but like if you're in the wrong tribe in the booster draft portion, like you are screwed, right? I mean, what are you even going to do?
So staying open doesn't mean like take the best card of every pack to try to see what's there. It more means if you can take like a card like Vanquish the Weak, which fits into multiple decks, or a Pirate's Cutlass, which fits into multiple decks, or a Pious Interdiction, which fits into multiple decks, you should do that over taking one of the more linear cards. But once you've identified that tribe, you really can't waver. You don't get to second guess yourself. You're not switching in the middle of pack 2 very often. And draft a low curve efficient deck. Queen's Base Soldier, 2 mana, 2/2 Vampire. I have yet to cut one of these from one of my Vampire decks.
I played it too, yeah.
You cut it in a Pirate deck, because the Pirate deck can often have other 2-drops they want a little bit more, but this is not a format where your bears are in your sideboard very often. So try to draft something efficient.
One last point that I have heard from a few of the players actually here, kind of rumblings, and this idea has been forming in coverage as well from our drafts that we've been doing in preparation for the tournament. And I have to say, there's something there, which is the idea of that there's kind of this moment every game where you kind of hold your breath. And if the thing that you don't want to happen happens, you probably lose. And if it doesn't, well, then you get to play. Some examples. Turn 5, your opponent's in red. Do they play Charging Monstrosaur and attack you with it?
Well,
Turn 5 against Merfolk, they have a Jade Guardian. You know what's coming. Do they play one with the wind on it, right? Another one from the Merfolk deck is they attack with their things. Do they have River Herald's Boon to blow you out or not? I can keep going down the line here on you go into the Vampires deck and it's like, do they have a Deacon that can start applying pressure, or did they have the Vampire Zeal at the moment that they needed it? of course, I mentioned the charging Monstrosaur. And if you kind of go down the line, it's like there's these overpowered uncommons or sometimes rares where it's like you just you hold your breath and you hope. I kind of, that clicked with me a little bit. In the games that I've played, I've definitely been like, well, I don't really have a choice here, so here's my blocks, and if you have it, I lose. Kind of bothers me a little. Like, am I just...
That's more of a symptom of a fast format than this specific format.
I see.
Because
I feel compelled to block.
You have to put yourself vulnerable to Vampire Zeal or River Herald's Boon. The one with the Wind Jade Guardian combo or the Charging Monster, those are card specific, and yeah, those are going to feel like nonsense when you lose, but it's not going to happen all the time.
Do you think they're nonsense?
They are. I don't really get why Charging Monster is a 5/5.
Yeah, shouldn't have 5 toughness. What do you think that the Jade Guardian one with the wind thing is a problem?
No, I don't think it's a problem.
Because I feel like it's a problem.
I think that it is useful to have a set or have some number of cards in a set where people can, win games they would not otherwise be able to win, or people can win games against people who have a better deck or are better. Like, having good swings is good. Like, I don't think, we do, I think, willingly sign up for some amount of variance when we play Magic. I think that this is particularly low on the interaction scale, and that I don't love.
That's the part I don't like.
But yeah, someone assembled our combo. I mean, they'll get to have a little fun.
It is 2 cards.
Yeah, you can sideboard in a couple enchantment kill spells.
Okay.
Demystify, get some value.
I don't think I'll be doing that. I'd rather just lose to. Okay, well, why don't we call it a show there, because you and I have both had a pretty long day of work and also have to get up early to go do coverage in the morning. But hopefully this is helpful for you at home, getting your first steps into Ixalan and getting our first impressions. Of course, we'll be developing the format further as we go out. And it's a weird one for us because we're doing the World Championship now. And in, what is it, a month away, we've got the Pro Tour?
Oh, yeah.
They're drafting this set at the Pro Tour. So love it or hate it, we are going to know every single thing there is to know about Ixalan, and we're going to tell you every single thing we possibly can along the way to help you win your drafts and get an edge, on your friends and fellow players at your local shop or online. I'm feeling a little skeptical, Luis. I am. I feel like I'm a little shields up about this format, and it's making me kind of nervous because I want to do draft number 100 and be really enjoying it still. So we'll have to hang in there and see. I'm not shutting the door on it quite yet. I want to remind you that Limited Resources is brought to you every week by our friends at channelfireball.com. I mentioned a bunch of the awesome free content that you can get there. But of course, while you're there, you can get stuff, right? You can get booster boxes so that you can draft Ixalan with your friends and then give us feedback. Tell us if we're wrong. Maybe we're missing a deck. Maybe 5-color blue is a real thing. I'm going to try to find out online once I can find a little bit of spare time after the World Championship here. But you can also get supplies, all the things you need to play Magic. Magic is kind of one of those accessory type games where you can get the sweet sleeves or the cool play mats or whatever it is, and they're going to have all that kind of stuff there at Channel Fireball as well. And then when you're done with the rares, or maybe you've got a bunch left over from the last format, from Amonkhet block, sell them back. If you're not going to build a deck or trade them or sell them, get rid of them in some other way, sell them to Channel Fireball. They'll give you 30% bonus if you're trading them in, and those go a long way towards your next booster box. Everybody's happy. CFB gets the cards they need for the website so they can keep everything stocked, and you get a sweet deal adding a cool 30% to the buy price. And like I said, you gather those rares together that you get with your friends, and it's just like before they rotate, send them in. It's a really good deal for everybody there to get you some more sealed product out in the mail and get drafted again. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. We always get bombarded around the pre-release time with check out my deck and look at this stuff, and it's great. I look at every single one. I sometimes, it's hard to make last cuts off a little tiny screen and, blurry pictures or whatever, but I do read and look at all of the things that you send us, and I try to reply to as much as I can as well. And it is really fun to hear when you do better, right? When people say, thanks, I forwarded my pre-release, I finally went 3-1, I feel like I'm improving. That's what Luis and I are here for. That's why we show up to do the show every single week. And so thanks for that. I just wanted to say that was really cool for everybody that sent us feedback and everybody that does when the new sets come out. We love hearing from you. That's going to do it for this one. We'll be back with more regularly scheduled programming next week.
So, watching a little bit of GP Providence coverage last weekend, I did see that Osip Lebedovich.
We say Lebedovich, but I've heard people say Lebedovich too.
All right. Well, in any case, Osip, Pro Tour Venice champion from 2003, played against Owen Turtenwald, and Osip attacked a 1-4 and Atsakant Archer into a Shapers of Nature, a 3-3. Owen conferred with his teammates, decided not to block, and Osip just lost his mind. He was like, I got him, I bluffed the best, and he like gets up and high fives his teammate. So
it was so funny, Louis.
Obviously, he was just being a clown, but he did bluff a point of damage through. And that made me think of actually a very well-known bluff from, well, many years ago. And that was...
I'm excited to hear this, by the way, because Luis teased me earlier with it, and I don't actually know this one, so...
Yeah, and then BDM walked by, and I'm like, BDM, you remember the Terry So against Frank Carson, the bluff, right? And BDM's, yeah, of course.
Yeah, he said, I was in the booth.
Yeah.
I think he said it was his first time in the booth?
Yeah, it might have been.
Yeah.
But, so this is at Pro Tour Nagoya. This is 2005. So Frank Karsten, now in the Hall of Fame, is playing against Terry So. Terry So is a winner of an invitational. He has 2 Pro Tour top 8s. And
wait, what's his card?
Rakdos Augermage. Oh. He kind of bricked on the card.
Okay.
But so actually, in re-reviewing this bluff, because I went back and looked at the article Terry wrote, I actually don't know if it's legal, but we'll find out in a second here. So Frank is attacking Terry, and Frank has a Kabuto Moth. This was the best common. This card was super annoying.
Isn't this some game life thing?
It's 2 and a white for a 1/2 flyer, and it taps to give target creature +1/+2. Until
that's it? Turn.
Yeah, this card is insane. Imagine if you have a creature in play that taps to give any creature +1/+2.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. So you're just like attack with a bunch of these. Your opponent just can't find good blocks.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what Terry needed Frank to do was use his Kabuto Moth. If he tapped it, Terry was going to be able to attack for the win on his turn. And he knew that. So he needed to bait Frank into using it. So what he did is Terry goes, okay, no blocks.
Okay.
And he's like, I'm at 9, right? And Frank's like, no, you're at 8. And Terry's like, wait, I thought I was at 9. And so he like calls a judge and verifies he's actually at 8. Terry knew he was at 8.
Oh.
So I don't even know if this is like exactly legit, but he basically like, and so he got Frank really suspicious because Frank's like, he thought he was at 9, and because Terry at this point has let lethal through if Frank uses the Moth.
Oh, wow.
And he's letting 8 points through, or 7 points through, not using the Moth. And then Frank's like trying to figure out, and Terry's like, okay, well, go to damage. And Frank's like, no. Because, again, Terry was trying to like make it look like he didn't want Frank to use the Moth. Like he miscalculated and then he wanted to immediately go to damage.
Yeah, which is what you would do, perhaps.
And so Frank's like, no, use the Moth. Terry did have a way to gain 1 life. And he played it. So Terry had out a 2/2 that said whenever you play an arcane spell, gain a life.
Okay.
And your opponent loses a life. And he had an instant that was arcane in his hand. And so he baits Frank into using Moth, casts his instant, gains a life, untaps, attacks, and kills Frank.
Wow.
And that was the bluff. Well, it was 2 separate bluffs. It was one saying that he thought he was at 9 when he was actually at 8, and making Frank think that he miscalculated. And the other was being like, okay, could we just go to damage?
Yeah, try to get him. So, yeah, this is conflicting, right? Because on one hand, like, this is story time with Luis, not things that we think you should do at a Magic tournament.
No, I'm not saying do this thing.
But on the other hand, like, is that against the rules?
I don't know.
I can't actually tell you. Like, I know you're not supposed to lie to a judge.
No.
But what if you volunteer false information to a judge? Like,
I don't know if he even volunteered false information, though. He said, like, he might have asked the judge, hey, what life total am I at?
Wow, that is crazy. He went deep.
He went really deep. He wrote an article on it, too. The Anatomy of a Bluff, I think is what it's called.
And this was in 2005?
Yeah, this is 12 years ago.
Yeah, this is a different time frame for Magic. Wow, Frank's here.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Frank about it, actually.
I'll be there with you. We'll ask Frank about it.